Hello, Keith McGowan here, the Outboard Dad, coming back to finish putting this lower unit on. Remember to like and subscribe, and please add any comments that you have to what either we're working on here, or if you have questions about another motor. We're going to get into a Yamaha next, a small 9.9, so stay tuned so that you can see what we're going to do with that. It's a boat motor that's been sitting in a customer's shed for many years. But let's get into this lower unit. I want to show you some tips and tricks through this that I actually learned from other YouTubers as well as other people over the years. So the first thing I did here is I put this strap on here. So this is going to help hold this lower unit because I am by myself. It always is nice to have a buddy to help you with a second pair of hands. But you learn to do things like this to save your back and to make it easier to do the install. So this lower unit, we have it all together now. If you remember, we did a helicoil repair on one of these bolts. So if you have any more questions about the helicoil repair, how it works, or how I can show you how to do other helicoil repairs, you can certainly again comment and do that. So there is an exhaust part that's got to go on this. So let's get the exhaust section in first, and then it is a little awkward to get it up into place. If you remember in the last episode, we put some grease on the spline. I also put some grease here where the shaft goes in and out for the shift shaft, again, to keep it lubricated well so everything shifts smoothly while we're out on the water. So let's get this back on this outboard motor. So if you remember, this is that exhaust section. It does have a rubber seal on the top and a rubber seal on the bottom. So it only goes in one direction. So we make sure we get that seated in there all the way. I'm going to slide my drive shaft up in. There is a spline on here that has to match. And if you notice, I left it in gear, right? And why did I do that, right? Because when I slide this up inside here, I need those gears, that spline to match. So I can turn my prop shaft since I'm in gear. I may actually put the propeller on to make it a little easier to do that. But I can spin that so that I can lock those in place. This shift shaft kind of guides up by itself, but we're going to make sure that that goes in place before we secure everything up and put all the bolts in. So I wanted to show you a close-up here of where we're putting this lower unit. As you see, that plastic, that's our water tube that's going to go up to our engine from our water pump, and that's going to connect to our top of our water pump right there. Did put a little grease on that so it slides into place, right? And then also underneath here you see the next hole in the back. That's where our shift shaft goes, right? And here's where our exhaust comes down. You can see all the carbon and where the seal lines up. So this is how we line up and slide it into place. So I've gone ahead here and set up a little light down on the floor, shining right up inside here. So this way when I'm carrying my lower unit and I'm fitting it up and down, I can see better to make sure that my shift shaft and my drive shaft's going in the proper holes. Okay, so now you can see I've got my strap in place. I was able to just hook it around as I was lifting it up. So this way I'm not struggling with it while I'm trying to get the bolts in and line the rest of it up. So I just wanted to give you a visual of what I'm looking at when I'm trying to line this up. As you see, our water tube isn't lined up perfectly yet. You can see our drive shaft is in the proper hole, our shift shaft's in the proper hole, our exhaust is going up into place. So we want to just kind of guide this in slowly. I'm going to wiggle the unit back and forth until that lines up evenly, and then I'll lift up on my strap, little by little. Okay, so before I go too far here, I want to make sure I put some lubricant up inside the bolt holes so that these threads get lubricated. Now I'm also going to lubricate all the bolt threads and all the bolt sleeves, right? Because I want to make sure that in a couple of years when I come to change this lower unit water pump again, it's going to be much easier for me to take it apart, and maybe I won't be helicoiling the next couple of bolts. So I just take a little bit of white lithium. You know, everybody has their choice. I personally have not had good success with Never Seize, although Never Seize is kind of the product for years to keep bolts from seizing. I have found in salt water that Never Seize and salt water doesn't mix. It actually gets very hard. Again, maybe there's a newer brand out there that's better than that, but I choose to use the white lithium and have had the best success. Now I'm not loading it up in here, I'm just making sure I get a little bit on each place where the threads are connected, so that this way it'll make it easier to come apart for the next time. Okay, so now I'm going to make sure I get everything lined up and start to slowly crank this up. Now we don't want to put too much pressure on it. We want to make sure it's not binding. Also, the cowling I have my strap on is actually plastic, so I don't want to over crack something up there either. Shouldn't take too much. If it's lined up, should go into place. Alright, so it seems like we're coming along. We're going to get it the rest of the way and start getting the bolts prepared. Okay, so I have just the 4 bolts here, 2 and 2 lubricated, ready to go. I just want to focus on getting those 2, not try to get them all at the same time. We're getting pretty close here. I just want to continue to line things up as I crank it up little by little. Okay, so I've stopped now. I have a feeling I'm hitting those 2 splines. So now I'm going to put my propeller on. Work it. See that? As soon as I turned it, it went up a little bit. Those splines lined up. And let's see, it should go up the rest of the way now. Right, and now we're close enough I can get the bolts started. So let's get these bolts started in here, one at a time. Again, you may have to wiggle it around a little bit just to make sure you get it in place. So now I can go ahead and get the rest of the bolts started. I can see my gasket here from my exhaust tube that's lined up properly, so I can see that everything is there. I know my water tube is connected properly. I'm going to go up and check my shift shaft, make sure that came up in the right location before I secure this all up. Okay, so if you remember, we had a bolt that was kind of stuck in there at the end. This was the bolt that came out. I cleaned it all off, all the corrosion off of it, hit it with a wire brush, and I also lubricated it really well. So this should go in a lot easier and come out a lot easier next time. So it goes right in, we're good. Now notice I didn't completely tighten, we still have a short gap here. So I wanted to go up and make sure, and we did. I'll show you a picture that our shift shaft did come up through the center. We'll show you a quick snapshot of that. And then we're gonna tighten this all up and make sure it's all lined up and ready to go. Okay, we ensured that our shift shaft is lined up properly. We don't want to go ahead and tighten everything up, and if it's kind of kinked or in the wrong spot, it could damage the linkage. We want to be careful of that. We want to make sure it's going to move freely when we're shifting. And now that we're sure that everything is lined up properly, we have all our bolts in, we're just going to tighten them all up the rest of the way. So I'm going to talk about tools, as I talked about a little Healy coil last time. This is a Craftsman tool I've had for many years. It's just a little 1/2 inch by 9/16 ratchet wrench. Comes in handy in these tight spots when I can't get my ratchet inside there because this cavitation plate's in the way. So it comes in really handy, and it makes it easier to tighten things up. Now I don't want to tighten these one at a time. I want to do, all the way up one at a time. I want to alternate from side to side. This way I'm evenly tightening this so it lines up nicely, little by little. And of course I can use my ratchet wrench or my ratchets for the other bolts. Now we don't want to go crazy tightening these up. They don't need to be cranked in there so you can never get them out. But we also want to make sure that obviously they're not going to come loose. So again, we're going to check this. First time out on the water, we come back out and we're going to check our lower unit oil. We're going to make sure there's no moisture in it because this is a new outboard to us. It may be a new outboard, not be a new outboard motor, but it's new to me. So when I run it, when I get back, that probably same day, I'm going to go through a couple of checks to make sure everything's all right. So let me finish tightening this up, and then we'll start looking at that power tilt and trim next. Because there's a specialty tool to remove that, and I'm going to show you how to make one so you don't have to pay for one. Now there's a lot of aftermarket tools out there, and I'll discuss that in the next video.